In the digital age, our phones are our lifelines. They are an extension of ourselves, a constant connection to the people we love. A single text message can bring comfort, deliver joy, or provide reassurance with a few simple words. This is a story about a chilling deception that turned a tool of connection into a weapon of misdirection. It's about a desperate search for a missing young woman, a search that was being sabotaged from the inside by the very person responsible. A message like "I'm fine." But what if the person sending that message wasn't fine at all? What if they were the victim of a terrible crime? She was in an accelerated program at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in Hayward, California, a demanding course of study that she was passionate about. Then, a strange and deeply unsettling series of events began to unfold. The phone was on the move, which gave her family a flicker of hope. Maybe she had left willingly. Maybe she just needed some space. But then, the first text message arrived. Michelle's phone began to move. Using cell phone tower data, police could track the phone's location. The message claimed that she was fine, but that she didn't want to talk to her mother. It was vague and dismissive, completely unlike Michelle's usual warm and open communication style. It was the first sign that something was terribly wrong. She was known for being bubbly, responsible, and incredibly close to her family. Security camera footage from that evening provided the first major breakthrough, and it was chilling. The connection was more tangled. Giselle Esteban had developed a deep, obsessive, and completely baseless hatred for Michelle La. In the months leading up to Michelle's disappearance, Esteban had sent a barrage of threatening text messages to Michelle, accusing her of ruining her life. She had even told friends that she wished Michelle was dead. She was a prime suspect, and now she was on video, driving Michelle's car on the night she vanished. She had convinced herself that Michelle was somehow responsible for her relationship problems with Mark. But the evidence against her began to mount, piece by agonizing piece. Dental records confirmed the family's worst fears. It was Michelle La. She had been murdered on the day she disappeared. At the trial, the prosecution laid out the case, and they detailed the cold, calculated deception that followed. The text messages were shown to the jury, each one a cruel twist of the knife for a family already in agony. They painted a picture of a woman consumed by a baseless, obsessive jealousy. But for the family of Michelle La, it was the beginning of a 4-month nightmare. A lie sent from the hands of the person who had stolen their daughter from them forever. It's a case that proves that while the truth can be temporarily hidden behind a screen, it can never be truly erased. They presented the mountain of forensic and digital evidence that tied Esteban to the crime. Our phones, which hold so much of our lives, can be turned against us. A text message, a symbol of instant connection, can be twisted into a tool of calculated, cold-blooded deceit. They found Michelle's DNA on one of Esteban's shoes. They found security footage of Esteban at an ATM near where Michelle's phone had pinged. She believed Michelle was trying to steal him, even though there was no evidence to support this. In October 2012, Giselle Esteban was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, but this time, only one person gets out: the driver. And it wasn't Michelle La. The driver was a woman police soon identified as Giselle Esteban. And with that identification, the entire case snapped into focus. The footage showed Michelle walking to her car. Then, a second person is seen getting into the car with her. The investigation had become a murder inquiry, even though Michelle's body had not yet been found. The person sending the "I am fine" texts was the same person seen driving the victim's car, the same person whose shoe was stained with the victim's DNA. The digital illusion was crumbling. The text messages, once a tool of deception, now became a crucial part of the case against Esteban. They proved that someone had Michelle's phone and was actively trying to create a false narrative. A short time later, the car is seen pulling out of the garage. They were sent to her friends and family, all carrying a similar theme. She was okay, she needed space, and she didn't want to be contacted. They organized massive search parties, plastering the area with missing person flyers. They knew she was likely gone, but without a body, there was still a painful uncertainty. That uncertainty ended in September 2011. The tone was cold. It wasn't her. They knew someone else was using her phone. They had once been close, but their lives had taken very different paths. Esteban had a child with a man named Mark, whom she had dated on and off. But Mark had recently started a new relationship with another woman, and Esteban was reportedly jealous and angry. The messages were a desperate attempt to throw the investigation off track, to slow down the search and give the person responsible more time to cover their tracks. But who was this person? The person on the other end of the phone was trying to create the narrative of a young woman who had voluntarily walked away from her life. During a break, she told a classmate she was just going to her car to grab something. She walked out into the parking garage. She never came back. When she didn't return to class, her instructor called her cell phone. There was no answer. A few hours later, she was officially reported missing. And what if the person typing those words, using those familiar emojis and phrases, wasn't your loved one, but their killer? She would text her brother multiple times a day, check in with her mother, and always let people know her plans. She was reliable. So, on the evening of May 27, 2011, when Michelle suddenly vanished, the alarm bells began to ring almost immediately. This is a story of a text message that said, "I'm fine," sent from a phone belonging to a woman who had, by then, been dead for days. Our story begins with Michelle La. She was a bright, ambitious 26-year-old nursing student living in the San Francisco Bay Area in 2011. She was the kind of person who was in constant contact with her loved ones. Michelle had been at the medical center for a clinical training class. Her family was frantic. This was completely out of character. They tried her phone again and again. For hours, there was nothing but silence. It traveled from Hayward, where she was last seen, to areas around the Bay Area, including San Leandro and Union City. It was a message sent from Michelle's phone to her uncle, responding to his worried inquiries. Over the next few days, more messages would come. But the people who knew Michelle best didn't believe it for a second. The language was wrong. The police began their investigation at the last place Michelle was seen, the Kaiser parking garage. They found her car. Hours later, the footage shows the car returning to the parking garage. Giselle Esteban was not a stranger. She was a former high school friend of Michelle's. This, however, didn't seem to involve Michelle directly. This delusion festered into a white-hot rage. The police brought Esteban in for questioning. She denied everything. She claimed she was innocent and had nothing to do with Michelle's disappearance. And most damningly, they found traces of blood inside Michelle's car. The timeline showed that the texts were sent from locations where cell tower data placed Giselle Esteban at the same time. For 4 long months, Michelle's family held on to a sliver of hope. A volunteer searcher, trekking through a remote, rugged canyon area, finally found human remains. Giselle Esteban was arrested and charged with her murder. They showed how she had stalked Michelle, attacked her in her car, and then driven her body to a remote location. The defense argued the evidence was circumstantial, but the jury saw through the lies. The story of Michelle La is a tragedy born of a modern obsession. It is a stark reminder of the dark side of our interconnected world. The message "I'm fine" should be a comfort.